Journey to Becoming podcast is all about the changes, transitions, and transformations we encounter on our journey to aligning with purpose and living life with intentionality, fulfillment, and impact. I'm your host, Sabine Gideon, and my mission is to help those starting their entrepreneurial journeys or simply shifting gears to better align with purpose by sharing the journeys of others, offering practical tips and strategies, and providing encouragement to help you pull through whatever obstacle is standing in your way. So I invite you to sit back, relax, and join me on this journey of discovery. Joining us today on the Journey to Becoming podcast is Stormi Lewis. Stormi is an author of several books and a story sharing coach. Her specialty is helping people over 30 overcome their fear and excuses to not publish their own stories. After spending a lifetime with bipolar disorder and ADHD, Stormi uses her experiences to help others achieve success in publishing a book while working around your everyday life, imposter syndrome, pandemic, and all. Welcome to the show, Stormi. We're so happy to have you here.
I am so excited to be here with you.
Absolutely. There's a lot here that I want to unpack. So let's start off with you sharing a little bit about your journey with the audience. How did you become this multi-book author who now helps other people do the same?
I turned 40. That was the journey. No, I've always I loved writing. That was kind of my escape for the chaos going inside my head. And I was the girl that got yelled at because I would run into things because I always had my nose in a book. When I was manic and I couldn't sleep, I would read books under the cover with the flashlight. It helped me survive bullying, my depressive states as well. Because as a kid, I had no idea what was going on. But I was told by a lot of people that nobody would want to read what I had to say because you couldn't be an author unless you knew somebody who knew somebody kind of thing. And I was already dancing and I knew I couldn't dance forever. So I went ahead and got a degree in interpreting sign language. So while I was dancing, I was also a nationally certified interpreter. And then I got hurt, so that took the dancing out. And it turns out I don't play politics very well. So that took the interpreting out. And I was just really getting burnt out on life in general. And so I went back to school and I got my degree in marketing, business management. It was really just going to be business because I knew I could be quiet and just sit behind a desk and be like a personal assistant because that's what I usually did. But everybody kept saying that I was really good with marketing and I just needed to suck it up and get the piece of paper. So I did. But the colleges that I went to didn't have an internship program. So I started a blog just so I could kind of play with what I was learning. And after I wrote that first post, I knew that my writing was so much bigger because at the time I was in a really toxic and abusive marriage. And after I got divorced, I realized after 2 bad marriages that it wasn't a people-pleasing habit I had developed. It was an addiction, which meant I was so easy to throw myself away just to make somebody else happy. And it got really bad and it was putting me in really bad situations. And it really got to the point where I realized if I didn't change that part of me, I would not survive. I would not last very long. And so I got on Groupon and I started just trying different things that I wouldn't normally do. Like I took an archery class and I did yoga, and then yoga turned into, hey, we're going to Belize for a week. And I ended up in Belize for a week with 15 strangers, but she forgot to tell me it was a couples trip. So I just showed up by myself and I'm like, hey, what's up, peeps? But she had told them all about the blog. And I thought I was just writing hey, step outside of your comfort zone, try new things. But I was really breaking my people pleasing addiction. And I just kept getting called to write about my marriage because I really felt like if I could put it out there, I could help at least one person, if not more. And I decided that a book would be the best way to do that. Only I didn't know what I was doing. I went ahead and I published actually 2 nonfiction books, and people bought them, but it wasn't like they were bestsellers or anything. And I still couldn't come out and admit that I was an author because all those voices that told me my writing would never be good enough as a kid were still floating around in my head. And then I was 39 and the pandemic came, and I was doing customer service for travel insurance of all things. And so I was the last person on the phone tree, and people wanted to really release their anger and frustration and negativity and being bipolar, even though it's just through the phone. I absorbed that energy. And again, I know myself well enough. I was like, I've got to find something that I can throw myself into that will balance me out. And a friend talked to me and said, hey, how about we get you writing again? And I was like, okay, but what? And I really felt like I hadn't done much other than work a whole bunch of different jobs to pay off my degree, which I'm still paying for. And so I didn't feel like there was another Surviving the Storm 2. So we talked about different things that I could write about. Turns out fiction came up, a story I started in the 7th grade. I told her about, she got super excited about it and said, yes, I would totally buy that book. I wrote 3 pages, another friend read it, and he was like, this would be an epic trilogy. And I went, it's not even a book. Are you kidding me right now? But the idea just grasped me and I couldn't let go. And I am getting ready to publish book 2, and book 3 is going to be written here before too long. And I'm loving it.
Thank you so much for sharing your background and your story. And so it sounds like in this journey, there have been many catalysts, right? To ultimately lead you back to the same place. It was just different things that created that opportunity for you to get to this place to say, okay, this is my wheelhouse. This is my sweet spot when it comes to being an author. And now it sounds like in addition to being an author, you are now supporting other people in becoming the same.
Yeah. After I published my first book, my family just really became a part of the writing process. And my parents are my creative writing team and my dad is my editor. But he kept asking me a lot of questions about the process and what it took. And was it really that hard? And I was like, nope. And so eventually it came out that he wanted to write a book for my niece and nephew. And he wanted me to help him do that. And I was like, absolutely. I'm not going to say no to the man that helped create me. And it's one of my favorite people on the planet anyway. So I've been working with that. I was going to publish 2 books this year. I have my second one and my third one already planned out. And then my dad threw in his first one. And then I went over again, and now I'm publishing a second one too. So I'm publishing 4 books this year. And I've created a monster, but I'm okay with that. And it just felt like a good fit, that I know what it's like to not have your voice heard. And now I am working towards helping other people, not only coaching, but also with the OG storm chaser has vascular dementia and she's in hospice right now. And I got my love of stories from her and my dad. And I really wanted to start a legacy, and she knows how much I stand up for the little people. And so I am now starting a small publishing company so that authors can actually publish their own books and not get limited on their creativity, and they'll have higher royalties, because a lot of bookstores won't publish your story without having that backing of a publishing company. So that's what I'm designing, is something that will give them the backing, but not take away everything.
So going back a little, the Surviving the Storm, first of all, genius title. Genius branding there. And in the beginning, you had mentioned that the catalyst for even writing that book was your marriage, that journey that you had gone through. So tell us a little bit more about that journey and the book and that process.
So that book is written in a specific way. And a lot of people tried to argue with me because about 2/3 of the beginning of it is me explaining some of those blog posts and ending up in Belize and how I was kind of learning who I was and how to love myself again and how I found myself single again for the 8 millionth time at 35. Like, come on. And then the last third does focus on actually opening that closed door that nobody knew what was going on. He was a great man, and I knew he could be, but I met him right before he was getting deployed to go to Iraq. And so I didn't know that he'd already had a severe drinking problem due to a lot of the demons that he'd had in life and never dealt with. And then he went overseas, and he didn't have the best of friends. They would do things and like, here, have a drink. It'll probably be your last. Like, didn't give him any hope of returning, and they drove me nuts. But then he would go and he would do his military thing, and he would have to be dry. And so then he would be that man that I knew he could be. Well, when he came back, he witnessed things, and he was not the same. And then his brother died shortly after, and that was really hard for him. And then he started really suffering from what I refer to as the vodka flu. In the beginning, you always think, well, if I love them just enough, and if I can show them what love is supposed to be like, he'll choose me. No brainer, right? And then after a while, you're like, okay. I have to stay now because I can hide the keys. I can empty the bottles. I can lock him in a spare bedroom until he sleeps it off. And when you're constantly drinking, you're constantly sleeping it off. And so then it was almost like a responsibility to keep everybody else safe. And then one day, he made a thousandth of an empty threat of, I'll just kill myself. Because being bipolar, I know the trigger words and I know the behavior. And so I already knew that he would never do anything. So I wasn't really concerned about it. But on that particular day, I didn't say anything. But in my head, I thought, please do, so we can both be free. And I felt so disgusted with myself. I have never hated myself more because I've never wished for someone else to just quit on life so that we could both be free. And so I went to the bathroom and I stared at myself, and my eyes were sunken in. I was a skeleton of a person, and I was completely numb. And I just loathed myself and said, I can't keep doing this. But he would do the same things he always did and promised to get treatment. And then the VA would call because he wasn't showing up. And one day I made the bet with him. I said, if I can ever find it one more time, I'm gone. And we had just moved, so the hiding places were not the same. And I couldn't find it, but I knew the behavior. And it was seeping through his pores. I could smell the vodka coming out of him. And one day I was sitting on the couch, and the 2-liter bottle of ginger ale was a little too flat. And I probably didn't even have to open the bottle, but I did. And I smelled it instantly. And I was like, all right, this is it. I knew he wouldn't let me go easily. So I had to start saving up my own money and preparing myself. And on New Year's Eve of 2014, I was locked up in the bedroom because it had gotten that bad. I had to lock myself in the bedroom at night alone just to make sure that I would remain safe. and I was packing. He got mad enough that he took off to drink his woes away and whatever else. And I packed up the house and called a friend and said, we need to do this now. And on New Year's Day, I moved to an apartment and did not leave a forwarding address. And when the movers came, it was so embarrassing because all these empty bottles started rolling out of furniture as they were moving. And you could tell these two kids that were helping me move from 2 men in a truck just didn't know what to do. And I would just take it and I'd be like, just keep going. And at the end, I laid out all of the empty bottles on the couch because he was going to know that it was because of him that I was leaving, that I had already done everything I could have possibly done. And if I didn't leave, I wouldn't still be here, because it was starting to get physical too. He used to just punch holes in the wall and say he punched the walls so he wouldn't hit me. And then after I got hit twice, I was like, I will not be a statistic. So I laid out the empty bottles, and there were about at least 10, 15 of them. Laid them all out on the couch, left the key on the table, and I never went back and never looked back.
Wow. First and foremost, thank you so much for sharing that story. Thank you for your vulnerability. I applaud you for recognizing that situation was not good for you for many different reasons. It takes a lot of courage to admit that to yourself first, and then to take the actions to actually leave. So I applaud you for doing that.
And that's why I wrote it in a book, and that's why it's written the way it is, because everybody was like, you got to put this at the front. And I was like, no, I don't. Because here's the thing. Just because these things happen to us, they don't define who we are. And I wanted somebody to pick up the book and be like, hey, this is a cool title, and read through all the stupid things and how I made fun of myself, but how I was growing and having fun with life. And then get to that last part of the book and be like, whoa. So if she can do all of this after going through something like that, then no matter what I'm going through, if she can do it, so can I. So I actually had arguments with people because they wanted me to focus on the terribleness. And I was just like, yeah, no, that's not the point of this book.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I get it. I completely get it. In writing my book, that was the focus too. Although I did do it in chronological order, but I've been so adamant about it's not about what I went through. It's about the fact that I went through that and I'm still this person.
Exactly.
It's that positioning that gives people hope, not necessarily dwelling on the negative. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. Wanted to take a quick break to share some exciting news. I'm excited to share the relaunch of my Transform Her program. This 90-day accelerator has been specifically redesigned to support those currently facing or considering a shift in life, career, or business. The 90-day accelerator is jam-packed with training, coaching, and a ton of personalized resources to move you from scared to confident, thinking about it to doing it, striving to thriving, and of course, stuck to unstoppable. So if you're at the place where you want to or are ready to make that major shift in your life, career, or business, but are feeling stuck, not sure where to begin, or are just scared, and trust me, there's nothing wrong with that because we've all been there. You can learn more about the 90-Day Accelerator on my website at www.sabinegideon.com/transformher. On the site, you can schedule a complimentary call to see if the program is right for you. So you've Obviously, you took something that was a defining moment in your life. You've leveraged it to build this career, this newfound career. Looking back, what's the biggest piece that you've learned about yourself in this entire process?
Honestly, it's been confidence. Even in that book. So I grew up with the don't ask, don't tell about mental illness. And I wasn't officially diagnosed until I was 22. And when I started going to therapy, even that poor therapist, she would ask me all these questions and I'd be like, yep, nope. Didn't feel like it was something I could even talk about. And then I got to the point where I was like, okay, this is doable because it's not something we talk about in my family. And the more I talked about it, the better I felt. And the more I thought if I told other people, they would understand me better. And they would see that I was still hardworking and loyal and all the things that I had been before, but I may get a little obnoxiously emotional from time to time. And it's nothing I can do about it, but it doesn't define who I am either. And so my therapist was like, well, just educate people. And I tried. And back then was working multiple jobs and I was getting fired and people stopped wanting to talk to me. They would just whisper around me like school where the kids kind of poke fun at you, but won't come and talk to you, which just makes you feel even worse. So I went back in my shell, but it just felt if it would be okay to talk about it, then people would understand that it's more than just what they saw on TV. And so even in Surviving the Storm, I talk about labels and how we have them, but they shouldn't define who we are. But even then, that was 2017, and I still couldn't be like, hey, yeah, I'm totally legally insane. Let's go. And then I got to be about 39, and I just couldn't do it anymore. And so I put my first post up on Instagram that said, yep, I'm bipolar, but look at all these things that I've been doing just fine. I can hold down a job. I pay my bills. I function every day. And a lot of people applauded me and it wasn't that big of a deal, but I still couldn't tell my employers. And then COVID hit and I just thought all these people around me were dying. And the OG storm chaser, my Nana, has vascular dementia and I was losing her. And it was just like, enough's enough. Listen, yes, I have this. Yes, I have bad days. Yes, I have great days. But if we don't start talking about things like mental health, it should be talked about as much as physical ailments, or we're not going to survive this pandemic. So I really started to share on my Instagram a little bit more. And then I just got to the point where I just went full out. And I may not be hireable, and I don't even care anymore. I am over 40 now, and enough's enough. And I'm tired of feeling bad about myself. It took me a long time because of the stigma to not feel like what I had was a curse. I felt horrible about myself. I felt like I wasn't worth anything. Like, this shouldn't be a part of it. Yeah. And so I just started talking about it because we have to. And I am trying to kick the door open and just share my story as much as possible to give people hope that they don't have to hate themselves just because they're not considered the everyday average Joe. Because what makes us different makes us unique. I write a great story, it turns out, for being crazy in my head. I am great with other people because when somebody says, you don't know how I feel, I can go, actually, I can. Because I literally am feeding off of your emotions. I can feel everything you're feeling.
Thank you for sharing that other aspect of your journey there too. In terms of coping strategies or tips or things that you've been able to implement, and understanding that maybe everyone's situation may not be where you are, but a lot of people deal with anxiety. A lot of people deal with not really knowing how to cope with their emotions. So are there some basic strategies that you've been able to apply in your life that could be applicable to others?
Oh, definitely. The best thing you can ever do for yourself when you're feeling like you might be a little out of control, notate it, and then think about what happened leading up to it. And that will help you find your triggers. So I know that if I'm really upset about something, and people hate me for this, but I will walk away in the middle of an argument. Because if you're riled up and I'm riled up, the more riled up you get, the more I feel it and I become riled up. But I have to walk away, calm down, and figure out if I'm really mad about something or if I was just feeding off of what you already were carrying. People hate it that I do it, but I do that because they of course want to follow me and continue the argument, but you've got to give me a second to figure out if I'm actually upset or not. And so usually after sometimes it's as short as 15, 20 minutes. Once I kind of burn off the energy, and if I'm still upset, if it's still bothering me, especially if it's the next day, then we need to have a conversation, but it's going to be on a calmer level. With the anxiety due to COVID, I actually have white Christmas lights around my living room. Lights is my most favorite thing about Christmas. And the white lights help provide calmness. I also shut everything down, especially with my ADHD. It's impossible for me to get to a deep sleep anyway. So I will get off of social media. I will stop working on whatever I'm working at about 6:30, 7 o'clock. And that gives me a couple of hours to wind down. I will watch something mindless on TV like Family Guy or Bob's Burgers or something that I can play in the background that I won't get terribly invested in. And that kind of fills my head with enough noise that I don't have to worry about, and I'll fall asleep. I also listen to Doxy on YouTube. So there's a great one about gratitude. And I will tell you that I do wake up feeling a lot better about myself. There's one called Just Sleep, where it's about removing all of the things you're thinking about so you can get a somewhat good sleep. And then you wake up and it's okay, now I can deal with all those things. And I give myself grace. That's the important thing. On the days that you're not okay, if you can just throw the covers off your legs, put your feet on the floor, and get out of bed, and be okay with the fact that you're not okay. So I do the best I can, and I celebrate every win. I don't care how small it is. If I put clothes on that day, that is a win. I got out of my pajamas, y'all. If I put makeup on for a podcast, that's an extra win. I'm just saying, it doesn't have to be epic. Celebrate everything you have.
Yeah, I love those. And at the time of this recording, we are in Mental Health Awareness Month. So this interview couldn't be any more timelier. And also, I think this is something that is timeless, period. But I just wanted to recap a couple of the things that you shared in terms of strategies that are working for you that perhaps the audience can begin to apply in their lives as well. So notating when you're out of control and giving yourself the room and the space to process your emotion. That one really resonates with me because I am one to sit with it. If I feel a certain emotion, if I'm triggered in any way or capacity, I know that means that I need to sit with it, to process it and uncover the root of what that emotion is. And to your point, is it me? Is it something that has been triggered in me? Is it them? Am I picking up on someone else's energy? And at that point, I can decide, okay, I process it and I let it go for myself, or I let whatever they were trying to project onto me go. So I love that one. Creating calmness in your environment through the light. For me, it's candles. For other people, it's like dim lights or music or whatever the case may be. So I can resonate with that one as well. Shutting down at the end of the day so that you can actually unwind and let your mind have some time to rest. I think that is huge in this day and age where the cell phone is like right by your head, first thing you look at in the morning. I think it's so important for us to be intentional about, creating that space in our own minds to just shut down and rest. Giving yourself grace. That is my saying. So I love that you shared that. Being okay with not being okay. Whether it is a diagnosed mental health issue or just you're being hard on yourself, just being okay with, I did my best today. And then last and certainly not least, celebrating the wins. You're so absolutely right. It doesn't have to be epic. There are things that we do every day that we push through that no one else recognizes, but we know the trouble or the pain it took to do it. And so therefore we should celebrate ourselves first and foremost. So thank you so much for those nuggets, Stormi. Before I let you go, I'd love to share with the audience, how can they connect with you on social media?
I will tell you, I know everybody says you have to be on Facebook, but I find that to be a very kind of negative playground to be in. So I am on Instagram. My clients call me the story sharing guru, and I love it. So that's my handle. And my website is chasingstormi.com. You'll see all the things coming, but I really just spend most of it on Instagram because that's where I get the love and the support that I need.
Awesome. So definitely connect with Stormi on Instagram. Check out her website, chasingstormi.com. The links to both of those are in the show notes. And certainly if you connect with her, be sure to let her know you heard her on the Journey to Becoming podcast. And last question for you is, what do you know now that you wish that you could share with your younger self?
I would just really tell myself that you're fine the way you are and what you want to do. Don't let other people talk you out of it because there's nothing wrong with you. You are epic and they just don't know it.
Such reaffirming words. Basically what I heard was self-acceptance and seeing that you're epic and that the way that you are is just the way that you should be. Thank you so much for that, Stormi. So again, connect with Stormi on Instagram, check out her website. The links to purchase her books are also in the show links. So please be sure to check those out as well. Again, thank you, Stormi, so much for being on the show, for sharing your journey. Thank you for the nuggets that you've shared so generously with the audience.
It's a complete pleasure of mine to be here. Anytime that I can share my story and maybe encourage someone else to keep going and even possibly share their own is a blessing to me. So you, my love, are a blessing, and I couldn't be more prouder to be on your platform.
Oh, thank you so much, Stormi. Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode. I hope you were able to grab a few nuggets and some action items that you can begin implementing this week. I'll be back next week with some more actionable tips to help you along your journey of transition, change, and transformation. In the meantime, please be sure to subscribe and leave a comment on the platform of your choosing. And if you really enjoyed this content, go ahead and share it with your network. Share it with a friend, a family member, whoever it is you know that might benefit from the information that was shared today. Until next time, have a wonderful and purposeful week.